a test. This is rock and roll.
Hey class, if you are 8th period, go on and get an extra piece of paper besides your notes. And if you are in this just to kind of get some more information, well, stay tuned. I hope you all kind of enjoyed that Good Morning of Vietnam, kind of wake you up. We are discussing, again, the Unit 11, which is Foreign Enemies and Common and Familiar New Frontiers and Familiar Enemies. We have, yes, already discussed Vietnam, but today we're going to go in a little deeper, a little kind of understand a little more of the history behind it. So starting off, 8th period, again, this is for you. Hope you're enjoying your lovely Monday. Sorry I cannot be there. However, I hope this kind of takes the void of me being absent. So let's get started. First up, so we've already kind of been discussing some of Vietnam and the different issues that gone on in America after World War II and kind of how it's starting to unravel. So let's just kind of brief real quick the Civil Rights Movement and the desegregation. We've been discussing this through Unit 11, the different things such as Rosa Parks, the sit-ins, the Freedom Riders, the March on Washington, the Selma March in Alabama, all these different movements trying to desegregate America. And this comes from, if you gotta think, after World War II, the African American population arrived home and they're wanting the same opportunities that they once had in war. So they're coming up with this new thought. And it's not really new because we've seen it obviously, segregation, Plessy versus Ferguson, Jim Crow, but they're finally starting to realize that this is not right. And if America is to move forward, this is kind of how they're going to have to do it. As well, we have a whole bunch of different groups that are seeking for this power movement. Let me type them in real quick. We have one, there's women. Women are seeking better rights. Some of theirs are, obviously the fight for equal economic rights in the workplace and society, their demands for equal opportunities in education, and then eventually we have Roe v. Wade, which expands the access to abortion to be upon the woman. As well, we have the youth, who are also highly seeking for this power movement, this seeking to be intellectually more ingenious and move forward in society. This grows kind of from the Beat Generation. If you recall, they were the group from the 1950s, the Up movement, the Elvis Presley kind of movement, and that's kind of where we're going with them. Also, they were becoming increasingly influential as the baby boom generation matures. We had this influx of baby boom generation after World War II, and the baby boomers are growing and they're wanting to kind of expand on their own intellectual influence life itself. You start seeing these protests and injustice facing the African Americans and the poor and the disadvantaged. So the youth start seeking the reality of what's going on. They start seeing the segregation, the wrongs in that, the wrongs in how the poor are handled, and the wrongs of just how anyone who has a disadvantage upon them, they're trying to fight that. They also go through the free speech movement. This establishes tactics, boycotting college classes, occupying buildings. You see this a lot throughout the Civil Rights Movement and into Vietnam, which is a huge aspect of how kind of Vietnam gets its name. Also, we have the hippie culture, the rebels against the system, the rebels without a cause, the whole idea that the youth has two different fields. They have the anti-peace war, but then they have the rebel side of them as well. We're going to look at our minority groups. This includes, expands from, obviously African Americans, but it expands it into Native Americans that are gaining more power on reservations, for fighting the discrimination issues, the unemployment, the police brutality, and the poverty itself. Along within this minority groups, we also have a group known as the Hispanic Americans. They lobby for better conditions in jobs, or different conditions in work, and things like that. So I'm going to delete those, but pause a moment and take those down. Those are kind of the power movements. Then if we go to the assassination of JFK in 1963, and Malcolm X in 1968, and MLK Jr. in 1968. Three very influential guys. We remember JFK. You'll remember, this is the guy with Peace Corps. So obviously he was big also on civil rights. Now you want to know those two things with him. I'm going to delete that real quick. Malcolm X, he is the activist. He is forceful. Any means necessary. You need to make sure you know that. Any means necessary to desegregate any aspect of anything else. That's another guy you really need to know about. Also then, and we have Martin Luther King Jr., who is a pacifist, and we know his, I believe, I Have a Dream speech and different things like that. The other social changes that are taking place after Cold War, after the World War II, we had the Cold War and the anti-communists. We have the McCarthyism, the fear, the Red Scare, the Rosenbergs who were put into prison because of their thoughts to be Soviet Union spies. All these different people are kind of coming up and starting to develop. Then obviously we have the economic growth and consumer reports. They're growing, things are growing rapidly. And in come after JFK's assassination, a guy named Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson was the vice president of JFK and takes oath after JFK is assassinated in Dallas. And he comes in with this great society, this idea that America is powerful. We just kind of have to gotta figure it out. And he brings in his idea on a war on poverty. Going off that, his great society, JFK and Lyndon Johnson, these are programs to help the poor. They help give access to education and employment opportunities. Poverty is it's a personal failure, they thought. No discrimination. And then we have the Cold War and the environment. Some of the programs developed throughout the Great Society and to promote this war on poverty was Head Start. Head Start, that was kind of your preschool, your pre-kindergarten. It was put together to void the gap, so to speak. Also, you have the Upward Bound. This is for the troubled youth. You know, the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club. These are different kinds of Upward Bound programs to help the disadvantaged or the troubled youth, to help get them out of trouble when they're younger rather than later on. We also have the Job Corporation. This is where your Native Americans, your African Americans, your Hispanic Americans can come in and kind of get this valued vocational training to go into the workforce to kind of break the barrier of where they are or what their socio status is. VISTA is another organization that was developed during this time period. This was Volunteers in Service to America. This is kind of like an American Peace Corps. It's going to be put in to help American regions who were impoverished to kind of resalvage and attack the unemployment head on and the illiterate. And these are groups kind of like the Red Cross in a way. More programs. We had the aid to dependent children. You know, if you're a single parent and you have four children, you need some form of help. The public broadcasting system, if you have ever watched Magic School Bus, Wishbone, Arthur, those are all PBS productions. They all teach you something. Yes, they're not. I know Miss Frizzle is hilarious. However, she is also a learning tool put in place not by the government, but nonetheless, their entire focus is to kind of ensure that you're developing your brain and continuing. Also, we have the Clear Air Act. This is more of the concern. We're developing first Earth days are sparking up. The federal government is establishing this pollution standards to begin, monitor the environmental problems. State and federal legislations are passing, regulating, and kind of getting these safety standards to help these consumers and different things like that. We also have some changes to government during this time period. In 1971, as a result of Vietnam and as a result of the draft, the 26th Amendment is passed, which lowers the voting age to 18. Then we have the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. This is a result of the cause, which was the Gulf of Tonkin. The resolution is whenever Lyndon B. Johnson, he came to, after the Vietnam conflict began, he said that the Vietnam people, they attacked our ships. He goes to Congress. However, Congress denies his proclamation to declare war on Vietnam because they're fearful that Vietnam is in a state of a civil war right now, and they were too scared to go into that. So what they do is Johnson makes up a plan and he presents it to Congress, And basically that plan was the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. It is a resolution providing the president has a conducting acts of war if necessary. He could basically, this is more your blank check theory, which eventually we come to the conclusion that Nixon, yes, did indeed abuse this. We also have the Wilderness Act of 1964. Continuing along, we have then the negative aspects of the Great Society and kind of its consequences. This comes in with the feel-good, do-nothing idea. This is where you really start seeing a lot of people abuse the opportunities that are given. To find the loopholes. I don't have to do. If I have 4 dependents, well then I don't have to work much because the government will give me money. This is where these loopholes start coming in, kind of where you get this negative steam. More about kind of Johnson's Great Society, some of his programs. We have Medicare and Medicaid. These are to help the poor and the elderly. The Elementary and Secondary Acts in 1965 helped fund the major public school systems. So now there is a fund set aside for the public schools to actually kind of get some extra money and things like that. We also have the Housing and Urban Development Act. This is to provide funds to construct low-income housing. This was put into place to kind of help those people who are in those poverty areas get out of there and go to a more affordable but yes, more productive housing establishment. As well, we have the Department of Transportation. This is where we're starting to get a lot more of our roads, our bridges. The state of Texas probably does the best job of that. All right, continuing on, let's just first look brief kind of about the Vietnam War conflict. You will see throughout this entire presentation that I'm either going to refer to Vietnam as a conflict or war in quotation marks, stating that it was not a war, and we'll get on to that in a minute. First off, let's remember we have the Cold War. This was, the war on communism. Containment. This was the fear to spread communism. The Truman Doctrine. Eisenhower's Demo Theory. Vietnam. And the Vietnamizations. If you'll take a moment right now to kind of pause and reflect on this video, and kind of look at it and read and kind of decipher and put together the overall aspects of these. That would be. Here's kind of the global overall help of where Vietnam actually is. It is located right here around Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. Over here you have the Philippines. Alright, now a period, if you will pause the video and answer this question. What are 3 So the question is, what are 3 major events occurring in the United States during this time period? And what are 3 occurrences leading to Vietnam during this time period? 8th period, if you'll pause now and answer this question on your blank piece of paper. Continue to part 2. We will be discussing the in-depth aspect of Vietnam. So right now you can pause the video and go find video number 2.